All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Some days I walk, some days I crawl, some days I can't feel much at all. My body's a maze that I try to read. Every step forward, a silent need. But I won't let this break who I am. I've learned how to fight, learned how to stand. I may fall, but still I rise. Through the pain, through the tears in my eyes. This road is long, but it's mine to tread. With every sunrise, I lift my head. I won't be defined by what I can't do. Still I rise, and I always will too.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. We're broadcasting from our studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our affiliated partners across North America and around the world. And as you know, I'm your host, Rob McConnell. Joining me now for our second hour tonight is a man who has spent decades scanning the skies and listening to the stars for signs that we are not alone. Are we alone? Well, Dr. Seth Shostak, senior astronomer at the SETI Institute, is my guest this hour. Seth is not only a leading figure in the scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but also a prolific speaker, writer, and the host of the long-running podcast Big Picture Science. With a background in radio astronomy, Seth has become one of the most recognizable and respected voices in the field of astrobiology. His mission? To find the evidence, hard data, that intelligent life exists beyond Earth. And tonight we'll explore that quest with him in depth. Seth's official website is www.sethshostak.com, and that's SETHSHOSTAK.com. And tonight, he's here to discuss SETI, alien life, technology, and whether that signal from the stars might be closer than we think. Seth, welcome back to the X Zone.
It's a pleasure, Rob, indeed.
Seth, for our listeners who may not be familiar with your work, can you tell us how you became involved in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence?
Well, yeah, it's a relatively short story, which is probably a good thing. But I got interested in astronomy as a kid. I built a telescope at age 10. This is not so unusual, of course. A lot of people who later became astronomers, got interested as kids too.
Sure.
But, so the astronomy thing is a long-standing interest. But I was also, thanks to the movies, I think, interested in the possibility that we could have some company out there. And that brought me to SETI when I moved to California. This is Northern California where I'm speaking to you from. People at the SETI Institute heard about it. They were people I knew. They called me up one day and said, "Do you want a job?"
Wow. You've often said that we'll find intelligent alien life within the next few decades, Seth. What makes you so confident?
Yeah, well, I bet everybody a cup of coffee on that. But you notice I didn't buy them I didn't offer to buy them a steak dinner, but a cup of coffee. Rob, it's just a reflection of the fact that the search that we're doing is to look for radio waves or maybe flashing lasers, some sort of signal that originates on another planet. Now, in order to do that kind of a search, you need some fairly high-tech equipment. And the facts are that the equipment keeps getting better and keeps getting cheaper. There's something here in the Silicon Valley, which is where I am, called Moore's Law, and it just says that, the amount of compute power you can buy doubles essentially every 2 or 3 years.
My goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
At any given price point. And so looking at that improvement in technology, I just said, well, at what point will the technology be so good that we could hear, a reasonably powerful signal from some of the nearby star systems? So that's why I made this offer to buy anybody a cup of Starbucks that will find ET. And if not, by the way, at least you get a cup of coffee.
That's true, and you get to meet Seth SHOSTAK in person.
Well, that's less valuable than the coffee, perhaps.
Seth, can you tell us about the mission and the scope of SETI Institute?
Yeah, the SETI Institute is a nonprofit research organization, and it was founded actually in the mid-1980s. But the primary program back then, today we have lots of astrobiology research programs, but back then the number one program was to try and find ET by, using big antennas, big radio telescopes to try and eavesdrop on signals. And that still remains our most visible project. Maybe not the biggest one, but the most visible. So we're still trying to do that.
And what is your role personally at SETI?
Well, I just got back from the Institute, and I was looking at all the mess on my desk, trying to figure out, indeed, what is my role here? Maybe it's to clean off my desk. But my title, official title, is Senior Astronomer. So, my input is not to the engineering, and most of this is engineering, to be honest, but my input is to the astronomy. In other words, if you're going to look for aliens, well, where are the best places to look? And, that's pretty much an astronomy question. So that's where my input comes. I also do a lot of writing, that kind of thing. So, that gets the word out, I guess.
I guess you're not talking about the aliens at the U.S.-Mexican border, huh?
Well, that's a different kind. But those, at least, you can shake hands with them.
That's right.
The aliens on other planets have not offered their hands so far.
How do SETI scientists actually listen for alien signals, Seth? What are the tools and technology involved?
Well, the number one tool, if you will, the number one approach is to do what was first done actually in 1960. Well, it was done by a fellow by the name of Frank Drake, a fairly famous astronomy, actually.
Yes.
Frank Drake unfortunately died about 2 years ago. But he used, and then a couple of antennas. Well, he was using basically one antenna now I think about it, but he was using an antenna that was at an observatory in West Virginia, a place I'm going to be actually a week from now by coincidence. Anyhow, he pointed this antenna at a couple of nearby star systems, roughly 10 light years away, and he had, fairly sophisticated receivers, and he was just looking for a signal that was produced by a transmitter that would tell him, well, there's somebody on a planet in that direction who can build a transmitter. So that was the first, if you will, modern-day search for aliens.
So how do you differentiate a potential ET signal from natural cosmic noise or human-made interference?
Yeah, well, it's not always trivial. In general, what you're looking for is what's called a narrowband signal. So that's a signal that's at one spot on the dial, just like your favorite top 40 radio show, whatever, is at one spot on the dial of your local, of the offerings from your local radio stations. And that's just a technical thing. But if you can find a signal like that that's at, 1490 kilohertz on the dial or whatever, and it's not at any other frequency, then you say, well, I don't know what that is, Bob, but, it looks like a signal produced by a transmitter. So that's what you look for. It isn't that, you look at the signal and you see if they're trying to send you, I don't know, the value of pi in Klingon or something like that. It's just that you find a signal that's localized on the dial. That's the simplest indicator that you found somebody with a transmitter.
What's the closest we've ever come to actually detecting a truly unexplained signal?
Well, I'm not sure what close means, because either you found it or you haven't. So, but we have picked up signals in the past that, at least for a while, we thought maybe this is it. And I remember several of these where we pick up a signal and, thought, well, I mean, this meets all the criterion. It's a narrowband signal and so forth and so on. And we also do a very simple test. If you pick up a signal that you think, I don't know, maybe this is it.
Yeah.
What you do is you just, nod the antenna. You tilt the antenna a little bit, point away from whatever star systems you're looking at, and see if the signal goes away. And then, you nod the antenna back to where it was and see if the signal comes back. That kind of thing. Just try to be sure that it isn't a signal being produced by, I don't know, military radar down the road.
How would a confirmed alien signal be verified, not announced?
Well, yeah. The announcement is a completely different story
Yeah.
because, that depends on whether anybody involved with it is going to call up their local newspaper or not. And by the way, experience suggests that they will, but that's okay. But what you would do is if you got a signal and it seemed to be what you're looking for, what you'd do is you'd pick up the phone and you'd call somebody in another country, maybe in Europe or somewhere far away, but somebody who also has a big antenna, and you'd say, look, we're picking up a signal here, and it looks like it might be ET. I'll give you the coordinates on the sky and the frequency. Will you see if you can find it? So that's how you'd verify. You just have somebody else, completely unrelated to you, as it were, look for the signals with their own equipment, all that sort of thing, just to make sure you're not fooling yourself.
Seth, are there protocols in place in case of a definite first contact event?
Well, there are protocols. In fact, believe it or not, I was a person in charge of the subcommittee of the International Academy of Aeronautics and Astronautics that made those protocols. I helped write them, in fact. But the protocols don't have any, these protocols don't have any force of law. It isn't the case that if you violate the protocols or something, somebody with a uniform is going to show up at your door.
Right.
They're kind of gentleman's agreement, although a lot of the gentlemen are actually women. And all it is to say, look, if you find a signal, check it out to make sure that it isn't just a bug in your software. And if you're convinced that it's for real, then just announce it to the world so that other people with, instrumentation can also try and check it out. It would be like, I don't know, somebody thinks that they found the cure for cancer. You wouldn't keep that secret. You would just publish it, or you would call people up and, have other people verify it.
Seth, stand by. You and I have to take our first break. And Dixo Nation, our guest this hour is Seth Shostak, and his website is SETHSHOSTAK.com. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. Seth and I will return shortly after this break, so don't go away.
Some days I walk, some days I crawl, some days I can't feel much at all. My body's a maze that I try to read. Every step forward, a silent need. But I won't let this break who I am. I've learned how to fight, learned how to stand. I may fall.
Yeah. Listen up. It's a cry in the night. St. Catherine's, man, we gotta fight. Bam! Gala Crescent and Ryodan Ground Zero's lost. Echoes of despair, what a heavy cost. Homeless in the shadows, begging for a way while the city's turning blind, letting good folks sway. Garbage on the street, smell of rotten pain. Drug dealers flaunt their pride, it's a damn shame. Prostitutes in alleys staring hollow and cold while the council's counting dollars. Our city's sold. Hey, Mayor, where's the care? Discos and laughter while the streets lay bare. Ignoring the cries of the lost and the weak. St. Catherine's, is this all you seek?
Welcome back, everyone. Seth Shostak is my special guest, www.sethshostak.com. Seth, do you believe that micro particles of alien life have already been found and they exist within our solar system, perhaps on Mars or Europa?
Well, it may be that there's evidence for extraterrestrial life in our solar system. I don't know about microparticles, but maybe if you just dig around in the dirt on Mars, you may find fossils, remnants of life that existed there a long time ago, or maybe even life that still exists there, that kind of thing. But I don't think you're going to find evidence for aliens in our solar system, unless I mean it's a possibility. The aliens have decided to come to our solar system to mine the asteroid belt. A lot of metals in the asteroid belt, and anybody paying attention to the news these days knows that certain metals, rare earth elements, can be somewhat valuable.
Just ask the president of the Ukraine. Yeah.
Yes.
What kind of intelligent alien life are we most likely to discover first? Biological beings or a machine-based intelligence?
Well, of course, I sort of hesitate to even venture a guess because it's only going to be a guess. But I would say this. In the movies, all the aliens are, they're all organic. They're all living things, right?
Yeah.
And they're usually ugly, but all right. That's okay. I mean, most of the things at the local zoo, I guess some people would consider ugly.
Yeah. And then there's the animals that are there, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But maybe it's only that they're different. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you think about, well, what sort of critters are going to be running around planet Earth another, 1,000 years from now or even 1,000,000 years from now, I think that if humanity doesn't wipe itself out, humanity will invent thinking machines. I mean, we have computers. They don't really think, but, maybe in 1,000 years they do, or maybe even 100 years. And those machines can improve themselves, right? That's the big difference. They can design their successors. And so if that's the case here, it's probably been the case elsewhere. And it could be that the majority of the real smarts in the cosmos resides in these machines. So maybe the Klingons have built some really smart machines, and that may be what the aliens look like, which, of course, wouldn't be terribly interesting. They would just be, a bunch of circuitry.
Right. Seth, in your view, what are the chances that alien civilizations are already aware of us?
Well, I think the chances are not overwhelmingly good. And the reason for that is, how would, you have to ask yourself, how would any aliens know that we're here? And there are only a couple of ways they could know that. One is that if they had really super-duper telescopes, or maybe they, send rockets around with cameras on them or something, and they photograph the Earth. And if they photographed the Earth during the last, century or something like that, they would see highways and stuff like that, big cities. They would see evidence of some sort of activity which is technologically fairly advanced, right? So in that case, they would know we're here. Now, the other possibility is that they pick up our early radio or television broadcasts. AM radio doesn't go into space terribly easily from Earth because of the ionosphere, but radar does, and television signals do. So it's possible that if they're close enough, if they're within 60 or 70 light years, they may pick up some of our early TV broadcasts.
Why haven't we seen concrete evidence of ETs? I mean, if the universe is so vast. Or is there a sign somewhere on the back of the moon that says, Earth ahead, turn back now?
Yeah, there may be, but we've made photos of the backside of the moon and don't see any of those signs. But I think that the only reason that we have not seen any evidence of aliens so far is not because there are no aliens. I mean, there are people who think that, but I'm not one of them. I think that the reason is quite simple. Our search for them has not been, terribly great so far. I mean, we've only looked at a few thousand star systems very carefully. And given that there are, maybe 100 billion star systems in our galaxy, maybe 1,000 billion, the fact that we've looked at a few hundred of them carefully, you shouldn't be surprised that you haven't found them yet. I mean, it's like going to a South Sea island, something like that, with a shovel and digging up a square yard of the dirt there on the beach and say, well, I don't know, Rob. We didn't hit any chests filled with pieces of 8.
Right.
So, maybe there's no gold to be found anywhere. Well, maybe not where you dug, but somewhere there might be.
Is it possible that we're looking for the wrong type of evidence, Seth? Is it possible that instead of the carbon-based units like we are, that ET is a totally different composition? Maybe they're a silicone-based unit. Is it possible?
Well, in science fiction, a lot of them are silicon-based. But when you say, okay, maybe ET isn't carbon-based, maybe it's silicon-based.
Okay.
And well, that's possible. Although, to be honest, carbon is much better at making complicated molecules than silicon is. But okay, forget that. Maybe they are silicon-based. But how would that affect your efforts to find them, right? I mean, how are we trying to find them? We're trying to eavesdrop on signals, right? And so it really doesn't matter what their body chemistry is. If they're building transmitters, that's all we ask. We're not very demanding.
But maybe their transmitter uses a different form of broadcasting that is undetectable to our systems because they're that much more advanced than we are.
Well, it could be, but they're stuck with the same physics that we're stuck with.
True.
Right. And so, the details of how they build a radio transmitter, of course, will be different. Just like, the people that build automobiles, the different companies that build automobiles,
right.
There's some difference between them. But they all have the same basic idea. And I think that in case of transmitters, they might have a different kind of transistor or vacuum tubes or whatever the technology is. But the physics of radio transmission doesn't change if you go halfway across the galaxy. That's just physics. And one of the great accomplishments of astronomy for the past 200 years has been to prove that the entire universe, as far as we can see, the entire universe is all made of the same stuff and runs on the same physics. So, you can talk about exotic physics, and they often do on TV.
Yeah, they do.
But it doesn't seem to be there.
How does the Fermi paradox factor into your work?
Well, for those who don't know the Fermi paradox, and if there are any members of the Fermi family listening, I apologize for boring you with this. But the Fermi paradox was just based on a comment that the Italian-American physicist Enrico Fermi made decades ago when he just said, sort of casually at lunch down in New Mexico, he said, "So where is everybody?" Now, Fermi was a very, very bright guy, and of course, the people he was having lunch with were also very bright people, and they realized right away what he was saying. What he was saying is this: no matter what your technology is, if you can build a rocket, you could, in principle, go from one place in the galaxy to another. I mean, you could go from one star system to another.
Right.
Now, it's not something we can yet do, but, I mean, maybe in 100 years or 1,000 years.
Yeah,
we'll
give
be
us
able to
time.
do
Yeah, give us time.
Yeah. Yeah, and so he was saying, if this is the case, why haven't they showed up here?
Excellent question. Is there an answer?
Well, there are plenty of people who, cook up answers. There are even books that claim that here are the ways to reconcile the Fermi paradox with your own life, if you will. And I said, well, maybe I'll just suggest one here. Maybe nobody sends any messages. They don't, have big transmitters because, they don't know what's out there in the galaxy, and they've just all decided it's too risky to broadcast big signals, right? I mean, you don't worry about that. You don't hesitate to broadcast. But maybe at some point in the future, we'll decide that, we're going to shut down all the powerful transmitters on Earth because it might be dangerous. Well, I mean, some of them might be doing that. I can hardly believe that all of them do that.
Could alien civilizations be using technologies far beyond what we can detect or even imagine?
Can they be using those? Is that your question?
Yes. The question is, could alien civilizations be using technologies far beyond what we can even detect or even think of, that our science hasn't evolved to a certain point that we can actually, understand what they're using. And is it possible that their findings in the scientific community are totally different than ours, even though some basics may be in place because of the law of physics?
Yeah, I think you should keep that last point in mind all the time.
Yeah.
Because, one question that the astronomers, even the Klingon astronomers, are going to ask inevitably is, well, how do stars work? What makes stars shine and that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that, no matter what language they're speaking or how they write down their ideas in books or whatever, it's basically the same physics no matter where they are. So I think that, our technology is going to look kind of primitive, I'm sure,
Yeah.
100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. But the physics doesn't change. As I say, that's the big lesson from astronomy, that the physics is the same everywhere. And as Scotty in Star Trek used to say, you can't change the laws of physics.
You and I have to take our break, Seth, so please stand by. And Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Seth SHOSTAK. If you have watched any of the TV shows that talk about the realistic side of the search for E.T., you've most certainly seen Dr. Seth SHOSTAK. And if you'd like to find out more about Seth, visit his website, SethShostak.com. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and Seth and I return on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, and we're streaming on your hometown radio, classic1220.ca.
Man, we gotta fight. Hey, Gala Crescent and Ryotan Ground Zero's lost. Echoes of despair, what a heavy cost. Homeless in the shadows, begging for a way while the city's turning blind, letting good folks sway. Garbage on the street, smell of rotten pain. Drug dealers flaunt their pride, it's a damn shame. Prostitutes in alleys staring hollow and cold while the council's counting dollars. Our city's sold. Hey, Mayor, where's the care? Discos and laughter while the streets lay bare. Ignoring the cries of the lost and the weak. St. Catharines, is this all you seek? Seniors
In the twilight's hush, where shadows whisper low, a silver glimmer streaks across the sky, aglow with a haunting melody. The air begins to thrum, an echo of the wonders that from beyond have come. Celestial encounter as the stars align, a tapestry of wonders woven through space and time. From the void of darkness, a chorus sings so bright, mysteries unfolding in the velvet night.
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Seth SHOSTAK is my very special guest this hour. His website is SethShostak.com. Seth, how do movies like Contact, Arrival, or Independence Day shape public expectations about SETI?
Well, I don't know, but I think their biggest effect is probably on young people.
Mm-hmm.
If young people are the way I was when I was young, back before the First World War, every weekend I would go to the movies. I would see at least one or two movies every week, right? And my whole mindset when it came to the existence of aliens or the possible existence of aliens and what they might be like, all that was defined by what I saw in the movies. Now, of course, the people that are writing the scripts for movies are not scientists, so I'm sure a lot of it is completely wrong.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it gets kids interested in science. Certainly got me interested in science. People say, how'd you ever get interested in astronomy? And the answer is, well, movies I saw as a kid.
Not to mention the night sky.
Yeah, there's a night sky, but you get to that later.
Okay.
You get to the movies earlier.
Yeah, so if you're talking about before World War One, then I guess I'm... Oh, my God. Let's just go to the next part of this question.
Okay.
Are you ever concerned that the public interest in aliens is dominated by conspiracy theories and science fiction?
Well, to be honest, it doesn't worry me very much.
No,
I mean, it seems to be an obsession with some of my colleagues. There are plenty of scientists who love to lament the fact that science literacy is so cruddy, that people believe all sorts of crazy stuff. But on the other hand, Americans, and I don't mean North Americans because I want to leave the Canadians out of this, but the Americans in the United States have always believed in crazy stuff. And that's not always bad. I mean, sometimes that's good. So it doesn't bother me because I don't think it's anything new. And if you're at least enticed to learn more about science, I don't know, reading a book or whatever, then it's a good thing. I mean, the fact that you have aliens coming down and flattening Toronto just for the heck of it, I mean, that may not be terribly realistic, but on the other hand, it gets some kids interested in science.
Why aliens would want to go to Toronto is beyond me, but okay. I'm trying very hard to stay out of the political situation, so please bear with me.
Okay.
How do you personally deal with UFO enthusiasts, Seth, who believe alien contact has already happened,
Yeah, well, I certainly meet quite a number of them. I mean, if I go to a conference,
Yeah.
right, and the people will come up to me, and they will say, look, I don't know why you're being so disingenuous about this whole thing. You know very well that the aliens have landed or crash landed in New Mexico or something like that, and that the government is covering it up. The government, when they say government, of course, they mean the United States government. The government knows very well that aliens have been visiting Earth, and they're covering it up. I try not to get upset because, of course, I've heard this so many times, and I've never seen any good evidence for it. In fact, when I was younger, see, I grew up just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. Where I grew up, it was 2 miles from the Pentagon.
Wow.
And everybody in my neighborhood, all the men there, worked for the U.S. military. I mean, that was the local industry, right? And so, I've had jobs with the federal government. I think I even have a top secret clearance. Not sure, but I think. And I've never been terribly impressed with the U.S. government's ability to keep anything secret. So if people want to believe that, the government is keeping it all from us, the first thing I will ask them, why do you think that?
Yeah.
What's the motive for that? Right? Why would they want to keep it secret? You want everybody to work on that problem if it really was true, if there was some good evidence. So, but the second thing I say is, having worked for the federal government, I've never been impressed by their ability to keep any secrets.
Yeah, that's always confused me. Like if the President of the United States cannot have a sexual encounter in the Oval Office, in the most secure building in the world, how in the name of God would they keep the secret that the aliens are here? It makes no sense.
Right, and particularly since the evidence that the aliens are here would not be something that would only be visible to the occupant of the White House.
Sure.
I mean, there would be reports all over the country, presumably all over the world. I mean, here in the U.S. we generally consider the United States to be the world, but I've lived in Europe and they have their own ideas.
Yes, that's right.
If the aliens landed there, their government would tell them.
Oh my God, I just had a thought here. Can you imagine President Trump standing in front of the world saying that, the aliens are here thanks to him?
Well, he's always taking credit for things.
Yes.
And maybe, I mean, if he judged their presence here to be a good thing,
Yeah.
maybe he would do that. I mean, look, if the aliens did land, to begin with, that would probably be on the front pages of the papers.
Exactly.
I think that. But, months or maybe even years later, when we finally figure out how to communicate with these aliens, assuming they haven't just wiped us out for the heck of it, if we could communicate with them, you would ask them some very obvious questions like, tell us all about the physics we don't know. Tell us how to cure cancer. Tell us all this stuff. Tell us, what is dark matter and that kind of thing. All these things they could answer for us in the same way that we might be able to answer a lot of questions from Queen Victoria's time from the people that were living back then. So, I think it would be a great educational opportunity.
I can tell you, having been to one of her birthday parties, that she is a great lady. Okay, that goes to my age. How do you personally deal with UFOs? Has your view changed over the years after speaking with experiencers or abductees? How has contact with Seth SHOSTAK changed over the years because of all the people that you've talked to about UFOs, abductees? Are you more of a believer now, or are you still in the middle of the road?
I'm just going to disappoint half the listenership here, but I haven't changed my mind very much because I've never heard anything that I thought, well, that's really hard to explain. Mm-hmm. There are so many possible explanations for the kind of evidence that's presented.
Yeah. That
UFOs have come to Earth. I mean, people say they've seen them, but that's witness testimony. And witness testimony might, I'm not saying that people would deliberately lie, but they might not realize that what they're saying isn't true. That's often the case. And so if they've, if the aliens really came here, I think there would be a lot of good photographic evidence for that.
Sure.
There'd be really good pictures instead of crummy pictures. And so, in the absence of that kind of really compelling evidence, I don't think they're here. And if they are here, you got to say they're really good house guests because they don't seem to do anything bad.
That's very true. That is so true. What do you think about the U.S. government's recent disclosures on UAPs, Seth?
Well, I don't. It's not something I specialize in looking at the UAPs, but I've certainly looked at the videos, and if you search online with some keyword that will bring you back information about those videos, you'll find that there are a couple of people who actually have looked at those videos and figured out to their satisfaction what those videos show. And they're obviously some sort of craft or balloons, actually, because we send a lot of balloons up into the higher atmosphere for meteorology,
right,
stuff like that. And some of those things are in fact balloons for sure. And so if these people who are basically amateurs just looking at this stuff, if they can kind of convince themselves or anybody who reads their stuff that what you're looking at there is not an alien spacecraft, but in fact a high-altitude balloon, well, who am I to say that isn't a possibility? And if it's a possibility, you should certainly consider it because it's not quite as extreme as saying, nope, those are aliens.
Seth, what role do amateur astronomers play in the search for ETs?
Well, they don't have a very large role because how are they going to find ETs? But there have been some projects that appeal to amateurs, not necessarily amateur astronomers, but things like SETI at home. Some people may remember that. That was a project that was run by the University of California, Berkeley, which is 20 miles from where I'm sitting here. The University of California, Berkeley, and they just had this software you could download for free.
Yeah.
And you put it on your computer. You may remember a lot of people did it.
Sure.
Like 7 or 8 million people did it.
Yeah.
And then they could reduce some data taken by radio telescopes, and they might be able to find a signal from ET. Now that's been stopped, but only because they couldn't pay the one guy who was charged with doing it anymore. I mean, it's even one person is somewhat expensive in academia.
I remember that very well. In fact, I had one computer that was dedicated just for SETI at home. And, I thought it was very exciting that you were being part of something with millions of other people trying to get that piece of the jigsaw puzzle that would kind of finish the puzzle. It was a great idea, and I loved being part of it. Seth, you and I have to take our final break for this hour, and Exonation Dr. Seth Shostak and I will return on the other side of this very short break. This is the final segment for tonight's show. Don't forget that each and every Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, we're right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, and the Mutual Broadcast Network. And starting in a few weeks, we're going to be going 3 hours from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. Monday through Friday with the best of every Saturday and Sunday from 10 until 1. The X-Zone is growing thanks to you, the members of the X-Zone Nation, and thanks to guests like Dr. Seth Shostak, who has been on the show for many years. And, I commend you for your great work that you've done over the years, Seth. And so from everyone who cannot say thank you because they don't have the opportunity of speaking to you, I'm going to say it for them. Thank you, Seth, for all you do. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, my special guest, Dr. Seth Shostak. Don't go away.
In the twilight's hush, where shadows whisper low. In the stillness of the high desert sky, where the stars tell stories as the eagles fly, there walks a woman strong and wise, with ancient echoes in her eyes, a healer's voice, a sacred flame, calling all seekers by name. Oh, Gwilda, child of the dawn, keeper of truths that were never gone, you walk the path where few have trod, with the earth below and the voice of God, teaching hearts to rise and bend on the winds of change that never end. From tribal roots.
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Seth Shostak is our special guest, and his website is www.sethshostak.com. As we were saying off air, Seth, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And, man, people need to understand that there's three sides to every story: his side, her side, and the truth. And that's what we try to do here on the X-Zone each and every night, is bring some balance. Yes, we have people who are hardened believers in the fact that E.T. is here. They're buried in underground bunkers at Area 51. We have the people who say, nah, it's impossible. It's a bunch of bunk. And then you have people like Dr. Seth Shostak, who looks at both sides and, using science and physics, is able to try and help us make sense of some of the most intriguing and important questions that we've ever asked on this planet concerning those who may be here or even watching us. Seth, what has been the most exciting moment in your career so far?
Well, I'm not sure. Well, actually, something does come to mind. There was a situation back in 1990, I think it was 1996, when we picked up a signal that looked like the real deal, looked like
Really?
this was the thing we were looking for, had all the characteristics of a signal being made by a transmitter. And for a while, I mean, we were getting more and more excited because we were doing all the usual tests you make to make sure that it isn't, just a bug in the software, a glitch in the hardware, or even, University of Toronto undergraduate prank or something like that, right? So we were doing all these tests, and it looked pretty good, but it turned out that it wasn't ET in the end. It took about a day or almost 2 days to figure it out, and in the end, it turned out that it was, it was just a glitch in the system. So kind of a technical problem.
Sure.
But it was exciting for a while. I thought maybe this is it, and I couldn't sleep actually. I was so, wound up about
Right.
this.
One day you will find it, my friend. I have
Well,
no.
I hope so.
The way that you work with the diligence, professionalism, you and the team that you work with, I have high expectations that one day we'll hear on CNN, we'll see your face, and I'll say to my wife, I told you he'd find it.
Well, in that case, you have to buy me the cup of coffee.
It'll be my pleasure. Seth, if we do find intelligent life, how do you think humanity will respond? Spiritually, socially, and politically?
That's really a good question, Rob, because there are people who think, well, the public couldn't handle the news, and consequently, we may already have found a signal, we're keeping it quiet, or the aliens may already be here on Earth, and we're keeping it quiet. Whenever I ask people who believe that, I say, well, why are we keeping it quiet? And they say, well, it's because the public couldn't handle the news, that they would go completely nuts. Well, I don't think so. I mean, think about your neighbors, your relatives, whatever. And suppose they picked up the papers tomorrow, if they know what a paper is, and they read, well, scientists have found a signal coming from some star system, 30 light years away or whatever. Do you think that they would start rioting in the streets? Would they go completely
hell
nuts?
no.
No, they wouldn't. They would just say, well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe they'd tune in the news. And so I think that that's the way it would be handled. I don't think that there's any worry that if we find ET that suddenly society is going to fall apart. Keep in mind the aliens are going to be far away. I mean, that's
Exactly.
just statistically. So they're not going to interfere with your tennis date on the weekend.
I've often wondered what ethical considerations are involved in sending messages out into space. Is it possible that the messages we're sending out could be misinterpreted as an act of war or a warning to stay away from Earth or something that would provoke the wrong message?
Well, I suppose that's possible. Keep in mind the aliens are probably not very well schooled in English or whatever. I mean, on TV they always are, but in reality they might not know that. I don't actually worry about that. I mean, they may look at Earth, with their equipment, and what they would find are signals coming off the Earth. Certainly, high-powered radar and television and stuff like that. But those signals don't tell them much about us, actually. Well, television does, I suppose. They could watch TV. They could figure out how to decode a television signal and turn it into, a moving picture, if you will. I'm sure they could do that. And, then they would see, well, what you see on your television at night, maybe without the sound. But I don't think that they would say, well, all right, these guys are obviously kind of worthless. It's time to launch the interstellar rockets and let's go wipe them out. I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So maybe some of them know about us, but they've not sent any follow-up messages about send more of this or send more of that, or can you restrict the number of commercials or whatever.
Well, that would be nice. Can you just imagine this? In the middle of nowhere, there are two people in a field. All of a sudden, they see this light in the sky, and like gets bigger, 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 bigger. And Lord, what do you know? There's a real flying saucer. The flying saucer lands. Now, here is a craft that traversed the universe, maybe the time-space continuum. Who knows? The door opens. Out comes the ladder. And down come these little 3.5-foot ETs. Kind of cute looking things like the Smurfs, okay? And they walk up to the two people who watch the landing. And they say, "Take me to your leader." The way President Trump treated President Zelensky, to me would be a major concern that, we'd have the first intergalactic event going. Nobody has ever asked President Trump about what he believes about the UFO community, or if UFOs are here. I would have expected something after the last government, what was it called, committee, that he would have said something by now, or somebody, one of the reporters, would have asked him that. But I have heard nothing from the president's office that has anything to do with UFOs, UAPs, what NASA is doing when it comes to the exploration and possibility of ETs. What's your take on that, Seth?
Well, I'm not surprised that the president hasn't said much. I mean, even aside from what you may think of Trump, and no other president has really said very much either. I mean, it's just not something that's, if you will, on their radar because they've got other things to worry about. So that doesn't bother me too much. I don't think that it really matters either, because if we find evidence for aliens, either by finding it in space, right, or picking up a signal, or even if they decide to land on Earth and stroll around looking for some good fast food, I mean, no matter how we do it, it won't be just one person that notices, right? It's going to be lots of people. There'll be people that are whipping out their phones and making photos or videos and so forth and so on. So it's going to be a discovery that many people will be involved in. So I don't worry too much about, the behavior of one person, even if that one person's the president. It's science. If it's science, there's no keeping it secret. A lot of people are going to know.
There's an idea for an entrepreneur out there who has money, who wants to get into the restaurant business, fast food. McCalians. There. You have all these little... Oh, come on, Seth. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
There's so much that we don't know. And I think the time is coming when we should be more serious about the exploration and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And what advice would you give, Seth, to a young scientist or enthusiast who wants to work in astrobiology or work with you in SETI?
Yeah, well, I occasionally get asked that. People will send me, mostly, young people, but they'll send me an email and they say, look, I'd like to get involved with this. How do I do it? Well, there's no secret sauce. You just go to school. The longer you go to school, probably the better. All the people that I know that work in this field all have advanced degrees, right? They're all PhDs or whatever. So it helps to stay in school and keep studying. But that's the only trick. There's no other trick, right? You just stay in school. If you have a degree, then you'll know what to do, because the people that are at the school you're at will be telling you, look, here's the kind of work that's being done out there. If any of it interests you, why don't you write somebody who's working in that field?
Seth, the time has come, my friend, when you and I must say so long. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the fact that you came on here and you gave our listeners some real answers. And all I can say is thank you so much. And X Zone Nation, please visit Seth's website at www.SETHSHOSTAK.com. Seth, until the next time we meet, take care of yourself, my friend, and as always, the very best to you and yours.
The same to you, Rob. I've really, really enjoyed it and really appreciated the fact that you had me on this show.
Take care, my good friend. And X Zone Nation, I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. So until tomorrow night, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone. And You're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and streaming on classic1220.ca.
Some days I walk, some days I crawl, some days I can't feel much at all. My body's a maze that I try to read. Every step forward, a silent need. But I won't let this break who I am. I've learned how to fight, learned how to stand.